Hello, my name is Charlie Fairbairn and I'd like to become your Flutterflow tutor, where we take you from being a complete beginner to intermediate to expert and finally to a master. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to create Amazon style filtering. To skip ahead, to save you the time of having to skip ahead to see whether this is what you want, here is the very basic example of Amazon style filtering. As you can see, I've only got 4 products going on here, A, B, C and D. If none of them are selected, we see all the products. If we select red, we just see the red ones. If we select 32, we only see the 32. If we want to see AMD, there isn't a combination like that. If we put Intel back, we can add blue to that to see whether it makes any difference. Doesn't look like there are. Let's see. There we go. And also, by the way, this accepts a list within a list. So if the attribute of a product is blue and grey, it will come out even though I only hit blue, which is why that is grey there. It should be a list really here to show that there are several attributes that are being considered. And this could be built out really for any kind of filtering application, whether it be that Amazon style, whether it be genres for a film, whether it be anything like that. We're talking about filtering on a list within a list. Now, I've just come out of a contract which was a 1-year full-time Flutterflow as the head developer. And although I can't tell you about that project until we release in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I can tell you it's possibly the most sophisticated Flutterflow project that will ever have hit the market. The last tutorial I did was well over a year ago, and I got 26,000 views. If you were one of these people, Flutterflow has completely changed since then. So do watch this video, particularly the next one that I do, which will be a 2-hour course bringing you completely up to speed. I think you're going to find it very informative. Now, that aside, what are we going to be doing today? Well, I have been asked over and over again whether we could possibly come up with something that replicates the Amazon style select, the Amazon style filtering. And I know a lot of you might have tried to do that using a query, and I am going to show you really why that doesn't work. We'll use conditional visibility with an optional custom function to achieve this. I must admit, having played around with this new format on Amazon, I don't particularly like it. It doesn't really give you the opportunity to select more than one feature. And I think that's important. If you can, it's not easy. So in fact, we're going to go one better. We're going to make sure that you can, for instance, on a laptop, you can choose black or white, but say not pink. And we'll take it from there. So ours will be potentially a little better than Amazon. Okay, the first consideration we need to look at is the setup of the database. And I'm thinking that we're going to do it a bit like the laptop on Amazon. And obviously we've got a name, we've got a price, and we've got a color. What I'm debating at this moment in time is whether if we put in the data type here for a string on color, whether that should be a list or not. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that it probably should, but it doesn't really necessarily need to be. If your products, if a blue product is different from a gray product, you might have a different product identity for that. But I'm going to put it in as a list here, because I think it's probably more applicable to what we want to do. After all, you could always have one item in the list, which is, say, blue. And then I'm going to, let's just save that. And then we're going to have, well, we might as well think about laptops. And we're going to do RAM. All right, I think that's probably more flexible. And then we just need a third one by way of example. And let's have processor, wouldn't it? Okay, let's put that processor in as a string. Let's make that a list. It's unlikely that a processor would be a different processor would be the same price. So again, if that's the case, you'd simply have a list of 1. Now here comes the boring bit. I'm going to have to add some records to that, And the problem is that now I've added them as lists, I'm pretty sure that you're unable to use the import CSV to be able to do that. So I'm going to go away and do that manually. I'll be back when I'm done. Okay, I've added a few items here, and they've tried to be a range of different ones. Now I obviously could go on and add a lot more, and you probably would have more, but to be frank, it's a little bit dull adding these in. So I'm going to start with just these 4, then we can just test to see if it works. Now I've added a few more items to the what's coming up in this channel. I've added video calling, WhatsApp style video calling from user to user right within your application. Keeping original names when uploading single and multiple documents, much requested. It's quite annoying, isn't it, when Firebase renames them to something else and you can't really tell what your Word document is anymore. An introduction to cloud functions, very powerful indeed. When we offload the computational power to the cloud, then we're not taking up resources on the phone, and it can dramatically speed up your phone and stop slowing down maybe other applications too. And a hierarchical Reddit style comments. I don't know if you noticed on Reddit, but you can comment on a comment on a comment on a comment, and it will indent further and further in. And we're going to do that by using something called recursive logic. So these are all the things that you've got to look forward to. Now, I think this would be a good time to invite you to subscribe to my channel. I cannot guarantee in what order I will do any of these. However, if you want to be informed as to when they're going to be available, then please do subscribe and you'll get a notification of that. Okay, this is not a lesson in design, it is a lesson in functionality. So I've created one choice chips, and I just want to sort of run through the details of it. I've played around with the colors so we can see when one is selected and one isn't. The only important one really here is the allow multi-select to be on, so we can choose black and grey, which mean we're not interested in blue or red. Okay, all I've done here is duplicate the 3 containers, change them so that they read the correct features, and I've added a list in the list view. Now we're going to have to wire that list up to a query to our collection of Amazon type laptops, which we will do now. So the completely unwired up selection process is here. You can see I can choose blue and grey, AMD, Intel 8 and 16 for instance. Now it's probably worth noting here that we've also got to put a logic in here which says if I don't select any of them, do I mean I don't want a laptop? Of course not. So not selecting any must be the same as selecting all of them. Okay, otherwise we'd never get any results if people weren't fussed about whether they had AMD or Intel. So we've got to bear that in mind. Now the debug panel here is also quite useful. As you see that as I deselect things, you can see that it's working here, each of those, so we have a list of items. Now, because what ultimately we're going to be doing is selecting a list from within a list, where any of the items that are in this list, if they are in the greater list, then we can basically provide a Boolean true. That record passes that. And if any of the items in here are selected and are in the greater list of all of them, list within list, then we're going to mark that as true. And when we go onto the processor, the exact same thing applies. Now the only way that a laptop can get through the entire filtering process here is if each one of those is marked as true. If one of them comes up as false, it's got to be excluded. Now I don't think this tutorial would be entirely complete if we didn't cover why you simply cannot do it based on a normal kind of query. So if we wanted to query a collection and we're doing it the Amazon style products, you will note that you can go through filters. Now you can add here a list within a list, but you can only do it once. Now that's just a restriction of Firebase, and well, we have to live with it. I know that a lot of people have tried, why can't I have more than one list within a list? Well, you can't. So you can try it, but it'll stop you at one. So if you have only one, yeah, that would work. But we're not. We're having three here, and if it was Amazon, they've got about 33. So that's why we do it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create the query, bind the query to this list view. Now, when you do a query, fundamentally, that query will be available to anywhere below it in the widget tree. Now, in this particular case, we're not really needing to put it right at the top. I'm going to put it on the container surrounding the list view over here. Now, the bindings are up here with the database, as we are probably familiar with, and we're going to query the collection, and the collection is called Amazon's style filter. Now, there's often a question here, as well, we want a list of documents there. There is often a question here as to whether we should put the ordering in or the filter in at this moment in time. Now, by all means, put the order in. We're not going to put the filter in here because we know it doesn't work. By all means, put the order in here. It could be price, low to high, or something like that. And I'll show you that in actual fact, to be able to show different sort orders, one actually has to do different queries and visibilities of that. There isn't any way that we can do the order by is not a variable that we could slot in at the end. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to create the field over here in the list view. I'll come back to you when I've just sort of padded that out, but I'll show you how that's all wired up when I do. Right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop down to the list view, and we're going to use the bindings of the generate dynamic children. That is fairly standard practice on creating a list view. We have to give that a list. Always best to use camel case throughout your project, really. In fact, in some places it's insisted. And the value is going to be the Amazon style documents. We don't need to change that. Okay. And we save that, and with a bit of luck, it'll say that we're going to try and create the children. So if you see that, we're on course. Now, I'm just going to create the container that contains the list, and I'm going to put that out with the attributes of the product and the price of the product and the name of the product. So let me do that now. That's pretty boilerplate stuff. Now, before I do that, the eagle eye of you will have noticed that up here we no longer have the AMD and Intel here as colors. We have color 0, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to show you now what I've done here, because if we do go back to the let's go back to the choice chips of here we go, of, for instance, AMD. You remember that we put that in manually over here, AMD and Intel. Well, that's actually not going to produce us the list that we want, because we're looking at list in list. So I'm going to do this for all of them, and the trick here is actually to create a page variable, and I will show you where I've done that, and then I'm going to do one from scratch over here, because I don't like it when people say here's one that I did earlier. All right, so we're going to go and find the page variable on here. Little tip, you can click into space to get to the top of the widget tree or the view that you want, and you can see that what I've done is that I've created a color, and I put this in as my blue, black, gray, and red. That gets it into a list form that we want. So when we are now binding that over here for the colors, we then go over here, see how I've done it, and rather than we're going to define the options of color, as you can see over here. So if I go into that, I've taken the page state, no further changes, and that will produce exactly the same thing, except we've now got the list, because we want to do a list within a list. So if I confirm that, I'm just going to quickly drag across the the end of my session over here, which I had running in background, and you can see indeed this one is the one that has got picking up the list view. This is the one that was done manually, and you can see they operate in exactly the same way. Now my session has run out, so you can't see the debug, but take my word for it, they're exactly the same way. Okay, now I'm going to go and wire up the list view as I said I would, and I will do the AMD and Intel manually again in front of your eyes, so that you can just be double sure that you know what I did in the background. Okay, let's quickly just do the AMD and Intel as I said I would. So we're going to go back to the page variables over here, and we're going to add a field here. Now this could get a bit confusing when you get to it. I've wired this up for name, that's not a problem. But when we wire this up, say we want to wire it up to the first one of the product list item, which is color. Do you remember how we put it in as a list? Well, that would allow for one product to have several attitudes, a blue and a gray. You can't actually do that without a custom function that we're going to come up to. But a second best way of doing it is if you know how many items you've got. Say you've got 3 items in the list in the database, blue, grey and green for instance, is that you do in position 0, 1 and 2. You'd have to do an OR between each of the 3 of those, which is why I don't particularly recommend entirely using the visibility without the custom function. But we'll come to that. So just to be super clear, we're using the product list item, the processor, item at index, first, default value 0, and there we go. This one is easy actually because it's simply price, and that one was not a list, so no further changes. Now that's wired up, let's go and take a look at it. Now we should bear in mind that since we selected only the first item in the list, it's only going to use the first item in the list. So if we have a processor, a laptop that's got 16 and 32 gigabytes of RAM, same price, unlikely I know, then it's only going to pick up the first in the list. And the only way around that is actually to put an OR between each of those and to say it's OR position 0, OR position 1, OR position 2. Very clumsy indeed. You'd have to replicate each of those ORs in order to be able to get a list within a list. So let's have a look at the right way of doing it, shall we? Okay, so let's go and have a look at this custom function, shall we? It is up here and it's called list filter. Okay, and as you can see, it's incredibly simple and it does everything we want. Firstly, it returns true if there's nothing selected in the choice chips or any list that you provided. So that solves that particular problem within the function. And this one is different because it is actually looking for a list within a list. We do not have to break out item 0, 1, 2, etc. into it. It will do that automatically. So if one or other, blue or grey, exists in the attributes of that laptop, then it will provide a Boolean result of true, okay, which is exactly what we want. Now this particular code snippet function can be found on my community masterclass board, and the link of that will be in below, and you can just copy and paste that into your own project and it should compile first time round. So let's go back now and look how we wire this up when we are using the custom function. And as you can see already, this is incredibly neat. We've got an AND function going between each of these 3, the color, the processor, and the RAM. Okay, so that's the first thing to note. So let's dive into one, and basically you'll see that they're all the same, except you're going to pick up the different attributes from the database and compare it with the different choice chips that are selected. So if we go to this first one, we're going to see if list A, list B is true, then we give the response of true. Else, if it's not true, we give the response of false. Okay? That is actually the same as this, which is done slightly differently. You don't actually need to do if it's true, because a Boolean basically will respond in that way. This one goes straight into the list filter, and we'll have a look at that. This one's for color. All right, so we're basically saying the list of, so this is the list attribute, so we're getting color from the product list item. Okay, so that is the one that is out there on the database. Okay, and then we're comparing that with choice chips one. Okay, what is selected there as a list and a string. No further changes required on that, and that will again return the value of true if this is true, and it will return the result of false if it is not. We then do the same for each of the others, swapping out the attribute in the database with the RAM, and then followed by the processor, and then in the other input into that function we'd swap out the widget state from choice chips 1 to choice chips 2 to choice chips 3. Let's see how well that works. Okay, we've got nothing selected at the moment, and we've got all 4 items. Let's go for red, and look, below and behold, we just get the red. Now how about if we go for red and Intel? Well, there we go, we've just got red and Intel. And what about if we go for RAM of 16? Well, we don't get any on 16 because we haven't got a 16, we've only got a 32. Now, what might seem confusing is if I take blue and we take off the Intel here, and we take off all of these, you're going to see we have a blue and we have a grey, and we have a red. Let's take the red off. We have a blue and we have a grey. Now, why do we have a blue and a grey when we specified blue? That is because in the database, one of our items is either grey or blue, and it's only displaying the first one here. Now, I could alter the a display of this to show that this is in actual fact a list that includes blue, but I don't think I need to do that because I think you'll understand that without me doing that. So in actual fact, this attribute is a list, so it's correctly picking up that item which is grey or blue at this AMD price here. Quick check, we take the Intel, that one remains grey, but if we just select grey, we only get the grey one. Any black ones? 32, nothing there, and you can see that we are correctly now filtering. We've got a red, it's the only one apparently with 32 of RAM, and we can check that by taking all of these off. We've only got one red of 32. So there you go, Amazon style filtering. Notice how fast it is. So I hope that's been useful to you, and please, I've got loads of more of these coming up in the near future. Do subscribe to my channel, I'd be most grateful, and then I can let you know when the next ones are ready.